Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to breakfast, the class, and the banter bus every morning here in the Safra Synagogue after 7:30 Today's breakfast and the class is dedicated in loving memory of Martin Dweck, Alav Shalom, L'ilun Nishmat Moshe Ben Bahir, sponsored by his family. Breakfast and the class is also sponsored by Tali Bat Simon as a Seudat Hoda'ah. Hagomel Hayavim Tovot, Shegemala Kol Tuv, magnificent. My friends, our parasha talks about the laws of Para Aduma. Yesterday we discussed the concept of the rationality or irrationality of the mitzvah of Para Aduma. But let's talk for a minute now, not about the irrationality of the mitzvah, but rather about the functionality of the mitzvah. What is the purpose of the Para Aduma? Now, I always found this very interesting. If anyone is actually paying attention, a lot of times when we read in the Torah, we're very, very concerned or obsessed with the close-up view of the pasuk. Is there an extra yud in the word? Like, that's how closely we're looking at it. But if you took, maybe instead of a microscopic look, you took a macroscopic look, you'd realize that something is very interesting here. So I'd like to take a macroscopic look with you for just 1 second. Let's take a look at the order. And in order to give you an example of how weird this is, I want to start with an example. Are you guys ready? Tell me if this feels a little odd. 2 tablespoons of baking soda. 1 tablespoon of sugar. 1 tablespoon of flour. Mix the tablespoons together in a pot and simmer over an open flame. What do you all want to know? What are you making? What are you making? What do you give me the recipe for? What are you making? Strange, right? Comes the pasuk and says, take a para, aduma, red cow, and make sure it's this, and make sure it doesn't have that, and take it like this, and burn it like this, and stick it over here, and do this, and do that. You haven't told me what it's for. And then after you give me all the ingredients, and you tell me how to prepare the dish, right? Etz erez, ezov, shni tolat, the grass and the cedar wood and the wool string, and then after you do that, then the kohen washes his clothes. We're already finished doing the item. We still don't know what it's for. And finally, at the end of that first bit, what is it for? Ve'ayita le'adat b'nei Yisrael l'mishmeret le'menida chatati hazaku baruch. Now you tell me what it's for, but you really didn't even still tell me. Right? Right? And it will be for the Jewish people. The first instance where we're told what the matkonet, what the recipe makes, is in Pasuk Yud Bet. Yud Aleph. Hanogeya bemet lechol nefesh adam v'tameh shivat yamim. Someone who touches a dead body is impure for 7 days. Hu yithatabo. Then you sprinkle the water on him on the first day, on the 7th day. So you're only telling me what you're doing with this purifying agent after you've told me how to make the purifying agent. Now what's even more interesting is it then carries on and tells you about this impure guy. You know what? If you go into the Bet HaMikdash, this is going to be a very big, very big punishment. So in the order that you'd think you should tell me about this, because if you carry on reading, fully until the 14th pasuk is where we should have started our parasha. Tell me if I'm correct. Zot HaTorah Adam ki yamut be'ohel kol haba el ha'ohel v'chol asher ba'ohel yitma shivat yamim. That's where you should have started the parasha. This is the Torah of someone who becomes impure. Someone walks into a tent, someone touches a dead body, now you're impure. Now you want to tell me the second step, which is what we said after the first one before. If you go into the Bet HaMikdash and you're tameh, v'nichreta nefesh hahi me'amea, you go into the Bet HaMikdash and you're impure, there's a terrible punishment for that. What's the solution? The solution is Efer HaPara, the story of the Para Aduma. So there are many answers to this strange sequential question. The first answer perhaps is an idea that we learn, where the idea teaches us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always makdim refuah lamaka. That Borei Olam always, first he makes the solution, the medicine, and then the person, he administers the wound. Before there exists a solution to your problem is not born into this world. Before a person is lonely in this world, Borei Olam already says to this single guy and this single girl, this is the person you're going to wind up with, this is going to be your shidduch. Before the person is trying to find a home to buy, Borei Olam already said, Sadeh or Bait Ploni Liploni. So the first approach to answering this question is that Borei Olam is always Makdim Refu'ah Lamaka. He first administers the solution, Para Aduma, and then he tells you, now if you're Tameh, I already prepared for you the way to deal with this problem. However, Rabotai, there's another answer to this as well. And to answer this question, and to maybe perhaps take a tremendous life lesson, I'd like to direct your attention to the 14th Pasuk, the Pasuk that teaches us specifically about the laws of someone who becomes impure. Zot Torah Adam ki yamut be'oel. Kol haba el ha'oel u'chol asher ba'oel yitma shevat yamim. What does that mean? It means if there's a dead person under a roof, anyone under the same roof is tameh. That's called tum'at ohel, the tum'ah of a tent. It's why we're very careful in hospitals. If someone's going to pass away, we don't want a kohen to be in a place where they'll then be under the same roof as a dead body. Okay, so this concept of tum'at ohel, the Gemara actually already talks about it. Says the Gemara on Zot Torah Adam ki yamut be'ohel. Says the Gemara, we learn from here, Zot HaTorah, this is the Torah, Adam ki yamut be'ohel. Says the Gemara, exactly on this point, that if a person wants, En divrei Torah mitkayimin, ela bemi shememit atzmo alea. The only way the words of Torah can be sustained, can survive, can last within a person, is if they kill themselves for it. Memit atzmo aleha. You want the Torah to stay with you? The only way to do that is to be memit et atzmo, to kill himself for it. And therefore the Pasuk says, Zot Torah Adam ki yamut be'ohel. Now this always bothered me, this Gemara. I don't know if it bothers you as well. You know why this bothers me? There's a pasuk that talks about the Torah. V'yigita bo yomam v'alayla. Beautiful. There's another pasuk that talks about the Torah. V'dibarta bam. These are the words of the Torah. You should speak the words of the Torah. V'shinantam levanecha. Teach the words of Torah to your children. Ve'ata kitvu lachem et hashira hazot. Write down these words of the Torah like a song. You want to teach me about how to keep the laws, the laws of the Torah, the mitzvot of the Torah, the classes that I learn, the Gemara that I study, the halakha that I hear. You want me to know how to maintain, how to sustain Torah? Teach me the law of how to learn Torah in the context of a pasuk that's teaching me about the Torah. You have no better place where to teach me about Torah than in a pasuk which discusses a dead body. Strange. You ever thought about this question? This is where you want to tell me this law? Over here, when we're discussing the laws of a dead body and the halachot of being tameh? My friends, I want to share with you a magnificent idea. Magnificent. We're all familiar with the story of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva teaches us a tremendous lesson, but not just by the words that he says and by the halachot and the mishnayot that we read in his memory, but rather Rabbi Akiva's own origin story is specifically a tremendous lesson and inspiration for all of us in our lives. We're all familiar, Rabbi Akiva Am Haaretz. His wife wants him to study, his wife wants him to become a big Talmid Chacham, but he doesn't think he could do it until one day he's walking along the road. What does he see along the side of a road? He sees a rock. There's water dripping on the rock. The water has penetrated the heart of the rock because it keeps dripping down on the rock. Eventually, what does Rabbi Akiva say? If the water, which is soft, can penetrate the rock, which is hard, how much more so can the words of Torah, which are so strong, penetrate my heart, which is made of flesh. He decides he's going to go study. The studying begins, and Rabbi Akiva becomes the biggest Torah scholar that the Jewish people have ever had, bar none. Okay? Now, I want to share with you something that the Sifrei Musar teach us, which is unbelievable. Think about this moment. A drop of water comes and it hits the rock. I want you to imagine that you took this rock, after one drop of water hit the rock, and you looked at it carefully. You took off your glasses, you brought it close, you took your magnifying glass. Would you be able to tell, would you be able to notice the impact that that one drop of water made on the rock? No, you wouldn't. Impossible. There's no mark, there's no mention, there's no impact. But if a billion drops made a hole in the rock, and each drop was the same as the drop before it, then there should be no way that any impact could be made on the rock. And what you see here is that the tiniest impact, the instance, the drop of water landing on the surface, however much it seems as if nothing's changed, something immeasurably, unnoticeably has changed. And the proof in the pudding is, if there was nothing in one drop, there would be nothing in a billion drops. Because a billion times zero is still zero. But the crazy thing, my friends, is how many buckets of water does it take to count a billion drops of water? Imagine a gallon, a giant gallon, maybe one of those big bottles, the Poland Spring bottles that you put in your water cooler, maybe even, a giant cask size. I want you to take a cask of water and pour it on a rock with all 1 billion drops of water in it. The rock survives that, doesn't it? What's illustrated from this is, it is not the amount of Torah that is learned, it's not the amount of impact that a person undergoes, my friends. It is the consistent timidiyut, the absolute consistency of ensuring that one drop follows another drop, follows another drop, each and every day, again and again and again and again. And the smallest amount of something done consistently is greater even than an ocean of water that runs over one rock that can't do anything. Zot HaTorah Adam ki yamut be'oel. I need you to understand this. A person who does not study Torah, why does he not study Torah? If you ask any person in the world if they think that they're a good person, people think that they're good people. Even someone who does terrible things still thinks he's a good person. If you ever heard someone justifying why they murdered somebody, why? They say, they were annoying me. Even something as stupid as that. Why'd you kill your wife? She was annoying me. Even that justification is because the person cannot sanction that I did it because I'm evil. I did it because they took advantage. I did it because that person said a racist thing. I did it because everybody's got an excuse. Even Hitler, Yemach Shemo, says that he's doing the world a favor by ridding the world of the virus called Judaism. I need you to hear this. That means that every person at their core thinks that they're good. So how come people aren't good? How come people aren't studying, growing, learning? Why don't they? Our pasuk teaches us this concept. You know why? Fascinating idea. You read a couple pasukim later, the Torah tells you the laws of the tumah, of the impurity of a vessel. And let's read the law together. The pasuk says as follows. V'chol keli patuach asher en tzamid patil alav tamehu. Any keli patuach, any open vessel that does not have a tight seal on its top, tamehu. Rashi tells us, what are we talking about? He says it's not referring to a vessel that's made out of steel. It's not referring to a vessel that's made out of other materials. What we're referring to over here is a vessel that's made out of cheres, out of earth, out of earthenware. Okay, a vessel that's made out of earthenware. If you don't have a tight seal on the top, then it becomes tameh. What are we learning? The way a keli cheres becomes tameh is if something tameh penetrates its toch. So as an example, let's say this is tameh. The only way if this is an earthenware vessel can become tameh is if it goes inside. If this is tameh and it touches it on the outside, an earthenware vessel, not tameh. Only if it goes to the inside. That's why if you have an earthenware vessel that's in an ohel, so the air is now tameh, it's contaminated because everything. So there's air in the inside of the vessel, except if there's a tight seal on top of it that's tied around the sides. Tzamid patil, it's tied tightly on top of the vessel. In that case, the air is not inside of it. Rabotai, all of this is teaching us the nature of humanity. If I experience tum'ah, it touches me. I'm next to someone. I experience something, but I do not allow that experience to come inside, to become a part of me, then you know what? I'm not tameh. Keli cheres, a vessel made of earth, that refers to none other than the human being himself that was taken from the earth, fashioned from the earth. We are the earthenware kli. But if a person finds themselves in a surroundings which is tameh, they're in an ohel, where everything around it, the air you breathe is tameh, the only way is to create a seal that is tightly placed on top of the vessel, so that the tum'ah that it experiences is external. It doesn't come inside. It doesn't ruin the Jewish home. It doesn't ruin the Jewish heart. Rabotai, there are times when we cannot choose the people and the company we keep. And in those moments, what do you do to ensure that the tum'ah, that which is impure, the impure ideals, the impure thoughts, the impure feelings, the impure language, what do we do to ensure that it stays outside and doesn't penetrate inside? We create a seal, and we identify that there's a clear, demarcated difference between what's out there and what's in here. Rabotai, if that's the point, if the point of tum'ah on the external doesn't change the human, and only tum'ah on the internal is what changes the human, the same holds true for tahara, for purity. The only thing that changes a person is that which penetrates to the inside. Pour all the water on the vessel that has the sealed top, the water's not getting in. But if you drip, if you decide each and every day you're going to do one small thing, one small element of learning, you know that you have a problem with anger, you decide that one time in the day, just once, I'm going to hold my tongue. You know that you have a problem with what your eyes look at. You decide that just today, just one time, I'm not going to look, or if I see something inappropriate, I'm going to look away. Just one time, if I see somebody that annoys me, instead of engaging and yelling at them, just once, I'm going to turn my head and not say something. Just once. I know there's a person that gets me wound. Just one time, I'm going to let it go. If you focus on doing that, and you think to yourself, what difference does it make? Only reason why I'm doing it is because I listened to Rabbi Farhi's class this morning, and now I'm doing this one thing. It's not true, Rabotai. These things that you do time and time and time again, eventually penetrate, it becomes the core of who you are. My friends, I was in Israel last week for a couple of days. I was blessed. And I was at the Kotel, and my phone wasn't working. I didn't have cash on me. I was trying to get a cab through the app that they use over there, the Get app. It didn't work. Right? Still didn't work. You know, anyway, I decided I don't have cash to pay the cabs. I asked the guy if he takes a card. No. So cars start driving by. I'm holding out my finger. One guy drives by, other guy goes like this. Third guy, Hasidish guy, long peot, pulls over. As he pulls over, he says, hello, how you doing? How's everything? I say, good. I said, are you going up the hill? Can I grab a ride? He says, I'm really sorry. He has someone sitting in the front seat. There was someone sitting in the back seat, but what I didn't see was that the fourth seat was actually pushed down, and on top of it was a wheelchair. He says, I'm really sorry that I couldn't give you a ride because you see the back seat is taken up by my son, my friend, I forgot what he said, and we needed the extra space for the wheelchair to help him. And he said, I'm so sorry. He drives away. I thought to myself, unbelievable. You know, there are different types of people in this world. There's the person who gives you the ride. There's the person who doesn't give you the ride. Then there's the person who doesn't give you the ride, but wishes so much that he give you the ride that he pulls over to tell you that he can't give you the ride. He pulls over to tell you, this is why I can't do this. When a person has penetrated the external shell with a decision to become a Baal Chesed, they've pushed the tum'ah that's inside, the selfishness inside of them, to the outside. When they've managed to receive, to attain, to achieve purity, when a person is pure, then even in scenarios which is not optimal, they're completely sealed off from insensitive behavior, to the point that he can't stop. It's not going to help me for him to stop, but he can't help himself. He's pure and charitable even in a moment when he can't be charitable. Rabotai, the reason why our parasha begins with Srefat HaPara is because it's trying to communicate to us that our natural state is a state of purity. Yes, it's true that the para aduma is there to solve a state of impurity, but that's not what came first. You didn't become impure first, and then we fixed that. You actually were pure before you became impure. So therefore, talk to me about purity before you talk to me about impurity. And that, my friends, is one of the biggest challenges of our generation. We feel that we are, by definition, impure people. We are, by definition, people doomed to fail. And you know what? That guy who's a good guy, he's a tzaddik. The guy who prays, he's a tzaddik. The guy who studies, he's a tzaddik. The woman who's nice and kind and tzanua and charitable and studies Torah and does all these things, she's a tzaddik. No. Those people, those are natural people. Those people are the way they're supposed to be. The default state. Ha-Elohim asa et ha'adam yashar. God made people straight, clean, clear, happy, productive. If you are in a state in your life where you are unproductive, if you are in a state of life when you are negative, if you're in a state of life when you are impure, where you're not studying, where you're not praying, that happened to you. And if that happened to you, then that's something that you can reverse. But the same drip, 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 drip. Everybody knows this. Half the time you meet someone who's very, very cynical. Nothing you do is good enough. You tell the guy, come, why don't you come for Shabbat lunch? Oh, you invited me for lunch? What about for dinner? Like you just can't do anything right. You think this guy, wow, so cynical. You can't understand. Complains about everything. And then, one Shabbat, who comes to shul with him? His father. However much he's complaining, his father's complaining double. And then you understand, Hada is not a complainer, Hada is a tzaddik. He's got 50% discount on the complaining from his parents. This is what he learned. And you know what? Someone who grows up in a house like that, it's almost impossible. Drip, 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 no good, no good, no good, no rabbi smart enough, no community is nice enough, there's a problem with the education, problem with this, problem with that. All they love to do is find problems. My friends, it's very difficult to create a tzamid patil, a complete seal to block out that environment. It is possible. It's very difficult to do so. So what's the answer to that? Adam ki yamut be'ohel. I remember years ago when I was a young man, so I used to go to something called a gym. I don't know if they have them anymore, right? They used to go to something called the gym. And in this gym, there was this one guy. And we used to laugh at him. Not loudly, but me and my friend, we were guys that were naturally strong. See this guy, we'd laugh at him. Had that would come into the gym, he was skinny like a rake. Come to the gym, he would wear, I don't know why he wore a shirt with a collar to the gym, but that's what he did, okay? So he wore like a t-shirt with a collar, he'd stand in front of the gym, in front of the mirror in the gym, go like this, fix his collar, stand like this. His shoulders exactly straight, you know, and then he would take the smallest weight, you know, and he'd be like, literally, you know, the 1 pound barbell, like, you know, you can barely see the barbell on either side of the fist, like, you know, he's like this. And then he'd sit there, fix his neck, again, 1, 2, 3, 4, like the hacker. Like, every day we'd come, we'd see him. It would be part of the experience of going to the gym, was seeing this strange guy who's fixing his collar and lifting the 1 pound barbells. Okay? 6 months pass by, okay, he goes up a little bit. He's a skinny guy, very small. Yeah? 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, 10 months. Before I knew it, the guy was lifting more than me and my friend combined. What was he focusing on with his shirt and with his thing? He'd been taught by the trainer that it didn't matter what size the barbell was, so long as he had, Emmanuel, like you said, the perfect form. The perfect form with the smallest amount of weight was worth much more than us big guys walking in, lifting weights once a week. Had that was there every day. Probably the whole day. Right? But the point is, that was his life's mission, and the guy became built like a truck. Now for some of us, building muscle on top of muscle is not something that you necessarily want for your life. But is there a difference between this muscle and this muscle? Is there a difference between this muscle and this muscle? Your brain's a muscle. Your heart is a muscle. You want to be able to have a brain that thinks properly. You want to be able to be a student of Torah, says the Pasuk. Zota Torah, Adam ki amud ba'oel. You need to be willing to die there in the tent. Spend all your time there. Make sure that every single day, that's how it works. And as you all know, by the way, in every single person, as you're lifting, you know what builds muscle? Adding the tiniest, most imperceptible amount of weight. Doing one more rep than you did yesterday. So my friends, don't tell me what you've done, tell me what you're doing. You feeling great that now you started to come to shul? Amazing. I love it. What are you doing more than you did when you started coming to shul every day? People contact me all the time that this class, every day they go to work, they're driving back from work, they're on the bike, they're on the Peloton bike, they're listening to the class every day. And you know what it makes a difference? Not because they listen to 25 minutes of Torah classes. It's because it's every single day. But my friends, if the only thing that happened from this class is that you're listening to this class, then we have failed. What more did you bring into your life because of this consistent thing that you're doing? Because it has to be producing results. Otherwise, your perfect form is not bringing you growth. Don't tell me what you've done. Tell me what you're doing. Memit atzmo, not shehemit atzmo. You know what makes Torah stay in you? Right? Not that you killed yourself for it, but that you constantly kill yourself, push yourself one step beyond you think you can. That's what growth looks like. My friends, this is true about work. You got comfortable in your job, that's why you're not growing. You got comfortable in your marriage, that's why it's not growing. You got comfortable with your friendships, that's why they're not growing. And one of the saddest things to realize about, at least who cares about the job part, at least in this conversation, one of the saddest things to realize is that comfortable friendships and comfortable marriages, it's not that they just don't grow. It's that comfortable friendships and marriages and relationships, comfortable relationships die. Because eventually, everybody gets bored of the same level and the same place. We crave newness. HaChodesh hazeh lachem, HaChadash hazeh lachem. We crave newness. So what are you bringing to the table? Not what did you bring, not what did you bring, what are you bringing? That's my challenge for this morning. What are you bringing? Everybody knows what area they want to start dripping water on. Drip, drip. Everybody knows. It might be on a midah, on anger. It might be on arrogance. It might be on patience. It might be on jealousy. It might be on acceptance. It might be on misirut nefesh. It might be on menuchata nefesh. It could be on any of these areas. Take the little water dropper, move it over the right area, and drip away. Memit atzmo aleha, and you'll see tremendous growth in that space. I'd like to ask one last thing before we end this class, and this is how you'll know if people were listening to the end. And that is, if these ideas are making an impact on your life, if you feel that they are connecting you to a higher purpose, to a higher goal, then decide that one of the drops you're going to do in spreading Torah is sharing classes. Sharing the class with someone that you think is relevant for them. So each day, when you listen to the class, if you're a daily listener, think of one person or a few people that class is relevant to and send it to them. That's a drip, drip, drip effect. That's you deciding as part of your growth process that we're not only going to be concerned with lilmod, but we're also going to be concerned with, like we say in the prayer every day, lilamed, to teach. Some people have it within them to teach, but if you don't, perhaps one of the ways that you could fulfill lilmod ulilamed is by deciding each day to forward or to share or to pass the class and its message on to one person that you think that class will make an impact on. May Hashem bless each and every one of us with infinite drops of water for infinite change in infinite areas of our life. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen.